They shot him 6 times. Point blank. And he walked away. They locked him in a military facility and subjected him to experiments that would have killed anyone else 100 times over. They coated his entire skeleton in one of the hardest metals on Earth, a process that should have been fatal. And he survived. Again, Logan's story isn't about superhero power fantasies. It's about what happens when something refuses to die. Let me break down exactly why, scientifically and in the lore, Wolverine is the closest thing to truly unkillable that Marvel has ever created. James Howlett was born in 19th century Canada, a sickly kid from a wealthy family. Not a warrior, not a soldier, a boy who got sick often and wasn't supposed to survive childhood. But he carried something inside him that no one could see. A mutation in the X gene, a gene that doesn't activate until the body experiences extreme trauma. The first time his claws came out, he was 13 years old, and someone he loved had just been killed in front of him. Wolverine's mutation gives him 3 things from birth, before Weapon X, before any government program. First, bone claws. 3 per hand. They're part of his skeleton, connected to his forearm bones. When they extend, they tear through the skin between his knuckles every single time. That wound heals in seconds. Second, a healing factor. Not just fast healing. Regenerative healing that can rebuild organs, regrow tissue, purge toxins and poisons from his bloodstream in real time. Third, enhanced physical attributes. Senses sharp enough to track a scent across a city. Reflexes fast enough to intercept bullets at close range. Stamina that doesn't bottom out. That's the baseline. That's what he was born with. Now let's talk about what they did to him after. The Weapon X program found Logan sometime in the mid-20th century. They weren't interested in curing mutants. They were interested in building weapons. The procedure: pump liquid adamantium, an alloy so dense it can cut through virtually anything, into the body and coat the existing skeleton. Adamantium bonding kills a normal person in the process. The metal is hot when injected. It hardens to the bones. Without a healing factor, the pain and biological trauma would be fatal within minutes. Wolverine survived it because his healing factor worked faster than the procedure could kill him. Barely. They built the weapon. They just couldn't control it. Now understand what this combination by any conventional force in the Marvel Universe. Adamantium cannot be cut by anything except itself. Cannot be shattered. Cannot be broken. Cannot be crushed. If someone hits him hard enough to crack a normal person's skull, his skull absorbs the impact, and his healing factor handles whatever internal damage follows. He is, effectively, a self-healing armored unit that moves like a human. But here's the weight problem no one talks about. Adamantium is extraordinarily dense. His skeleton alone weighs over 100 pounds more than a normal person's. Without the enhanced musculature that his mutation gives him, he couldn't walk. The mutation compensates. His body builds around the weight and treats it as baseline. He has always been carrying that weight. He just never noticed. How do we know the ceiling is really that high? Because writers keep testing it. With receipts. August 9th, 1940. Logan is being held as a prisoner of war when the bomb drops. He shields a young officer named Yashida at the bottom of a well and takes the blast across his own back. Burns that would kill any human being close before the mushroom cloud has finished rising. The comics push it further. Nitro, the living bomb whose explosion kicked off Marvel's Civil War, detonates point blank and burns Logan down to a blackened adamantium skeleton. Pages later, muscle is crawling back over the metal. By the end of the issue, he's on his feet and hunting. X-Men Origins. Wolverine ends with an adamantium bullet through his skull. It doesn't kill him. His brain grows back. His memories don't. That's the deal his body keeps making. Everything regrows except what it meant. And then there's the one longtime fans still argue about. X-Men issue 25, 1993. The Fatal Attractions storyline. Magneto tears the adamantium out of Logan's body through his pores and nearly kills him doing it. But the aftermath revealed something they always had been. Wolverine first appeared back in the Incredible Hulk issue 181 to show readers what his claws were actually made of. So what's the catch? Because there has to be one. His healing factor is not infinite. It has 3 weaknesses. First, heat and scale. If the damage is catastrophic enough and sustained enough, think being at ground zero of a nuclear blast, his healing factor can be overwhelmed. He can be reduced to essentially a skeleton and survive, but the recovery takes time, not seconds. Second, magnetics. Magneto can rip the adamantium from his bones. He has done it in the comics. That is one of the only forces that bypasses both the metal and the healing factor simultaneously. Third, age and fatigue. His healing factor slows as he ages. In the comics and the Logan film, an older Wolverine heals more slowly, gets worn down more easily. He doesn't die of old age the way a human does, but he is not permanently frozen at peak. The thing that can kill Wolverine isn't a weapon, it's time, and even that takes centuries. But here's the part casual fans never hear. Marvel did kill him. For real. On the page. And the way they had to do it proves everything this video has been saying. 2013. A storyline literally titled Killable. A virus from the microverse switches his healing factor off. Not weakened. Gone. For the first time in over a century, every wound stays. Then, in 2014, Death of Wolverine. Charles Soule and Steve McNiven. For issues, Logan follows a bounty on his own head back to a revived Weapon X program, and ends it the only way he is left. He slices open a vat of molten adamantium and lets it pour over him. The metal that made him unkillable hardens around his body like a statue. He doesn't bleed out. Nothing breaks. He suffocates inside the one substance on Earth he cannot cut. On his feet. At the kind of facility that built him. Look at what that death required. Erase the healing factor first. Then turn his own origin story into the murder weapon. Nothing in the Marvel Universe ever simply overpowered Wolverine. The writers had to disqualify him, piece by piece. It still didn't hold. For years later, Return of Wolverine brought him back, claws now superheating like they'd been pulled from a forge. Even Death turned out to be one more wound that closed. There's a version of Wolverine that almost never gets talked about. Not the Berserker Rage, not the bone claws or the adamantium. The mind underneath all of it. Logan has lived for over 150 years. He has watched everyone he has ever loved die. He has fought in wars that are now history lessons. He has been brainwashed, memory wiped, and rebuilt more times than he can count. That's not an exaggeration. It's a bibliography. The Weapon X story itself comes from a 1991 serial by Barry Windsor Smith, running through Marvel Comics Presents issues 72 to 84, where the program wipes Logan's mind and runs him like a remote-controlled animal. And for decades, not even Logan knew where he started. Marvel didn't publish his true origin until 2001, a 6-issue miniseries called, simply, Origin, which finally revealed the sickly boy named James Howlett, born on a family estate in Alberta, Canada, in the 1880s. Think about that. The character had been in print for 27 years before anyone, including him, knew his real name. He rebuilt an identity out of fragments, planted memories, and dog tags. More than once. The most dangerous thing about Wolverine is not what his body can do. It is what 150 years of surviving has done to his mind. He is not afraid of death. He cannot be intimidated by pain. He has felt every wound imaginable and healed from it. When most fighters hesitate, because pain signals danger, Logan just moves forward, because he knows the pain ends. This is why even heroes who are physically stronger struggle against him. Strength doesn't matter if your opponent doesn't respond to damage the way any living thing is supposed to. Here's the actual answer to why Wolverine is impossible to kill. It's not the healing factor alone. It's not the adamantium alone. It's not the century of combat experience alone. It's that he has survived long enough to know exactly who he is. Every time something has tried to break him, physically around it. Not because he can't be hurt, because he refuses to let being hurt be the end of the story. They called him Weapon X. A tool. A thing to be used and discarded. He outlasted every single person who ever tried. Wolverine isn't the strongest X-Man. He isn't the fastest. He isn't the most powerful. He's just the one you cannot stop. And in a universe full of gods and monsters, that matters more than any of the above. Subscribe to HeroLore for more breakdowns every Tuesday and Friday. Drop in the comments. Who do you think finally puts Wolverine down permanently?